Someone asked me a question the other day. They said, if you've published a Amazon best-selling book, why are you still working an average Joe job? The question caught me off guard, but it was a really good one. I published my book, Since When This Single Means Sad, in 2022, and I did it through the self-publishing method. And I have a lot of tips and things that I wish I knew before I self-published a book. So here are the things that they don't tell you about self-publishing. The first thing is that the money isn't great. And I do want to say that even though the money wasn't great, it was still a worth it process, but this is something that you should know before you jump into self-publishing. I laughed when I heard this question because as an indie author, I wish that I could have just quit my job as soon as my book went live. But unfortunately, this wasn't the case. A lot of indie authors, they end up not even selling 1,000 copies of their books over the lifetime of the book. It takes a long time and a lot of nursing and marketing to get your book from point A to where it's in many bookstores. And what many people don't tell you either is that most people are not just a one and done type of person. When you're an indie author, it often takes years to establish that kind of audience that is going to read all of your books and not just one of your books. It's almost like a YouTube channel. Like, you're not going to just usually make one video and be a star. Though that does happen for some people, it's more rare than not. And so as an indie author, I want to implore you to keep your expectations low to medium, because you might be a little bit disappointed if you set your expectations so high and then they don't turn out how you want. Make sure you stay to the end of the video so you can find out how much money I've made with Since When This Single Means Sad so far. And we are going on its 3-year anniversary. The next thing that I wish I knew before I self-published my book is that having an audience first is going to be your best chance at success. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the video, but when I first published Since When This Single Means Sad, I had 0 audience besides my friends and family. And so I worked really hard to get my book out there and to get it to people who I thought would love it. And the result was that my book actually did do well, but as I'm going to talk about later, it didn't really last. And so if you're going to self-publish a book, I recommend that you try to build your audience first, whether that is using TikTok to talk about the thing that you love, whether that is making YouTube videos, which is my favorite way, because once you get monetized, you can make money, and then you can also have an audience, which is the best of both worlds, and also Instagram. If you want to traditionally publish your book, a lot of publishing companies won't even take the chance on you if you don't have an audience. And one of the biggest things that I found frustrating was that after I published my book, I wanted to get it into places like Target or Barnes and Noble. But with these places, a lot of them had little, what is it called? They had little asterisks that said that you needed to have 10,000 followers, or if you don't have that many followers, you needed to have a certain amount of sales for them to even consider your book for submission onto their shelves. And this is realistic because it is really hard to get your book sold, and a lot of bookstores don't want to go through that process of having to return all of your books to you, which does happen. And so make sure that if you don't have a huge audience before you publish your book, that you at least have some type of email list or something that you can put your book out to, so that it's not just crickets, because that can be one of the most heartbreaking things. This next tip is about how you end up distributing your book. So as a self-publisher, you have to choose whether you want to distribute your book online in places like Amazon or eBay, or if you want to distribute it to bookstores through this thing called Ingram Spark. But I really specifically want to talk about Amazon. If you decide to publish your book on Amazon only, or even using print-on-demand services, then you won't have a connection to your audience. So if you plan on making, 1 to 7 books, or just anything more than 1 book, you're going to need to have an established audience. And unfortunately, a lot of people will go online and they will buy just 1 book, and then they'll never interact with you ever again. And so instead of building this kind of audience to where you release more books and those same people who read your first book read the next ones, you end up having a lot of people who read one book and then it just dies out. And this is problematic because when you go to publish your next book, then you're gonna have to start all over again with the cycle of building an audience. And that's why it is so important that before you even publish your first book, that you have some type of audience. And this is something that I am so gung-ho about now, because looking back, I feel like I published my book a little bit too early, and I wish that I had taken the time to create an audience first before, because now I'm writing my second book, but I have to start building my audience so that I can continue with what I started with Since When Did Single Mean Sad. So don't make the same mistake that I did. The good news though is that you can sell on Amazon, and you can also make a connection to your clients if you create a website. This is why for some time I had my books on a website and people could get signed copies of the book, because with the signed copies they would be able to put in their email, and then I'd be able to keep contact with them so that when my next book came out they wouldn't miss it. And so I definitely recommend that you use Amazon in tandem with another platform. Comment down below if you would love to see a video about the different ways to self-publish a book and the drawbacks and benefits to each one. The next self-publishing tip has to do with your expectations, which is why I think this one is really important. And that is that unless you have some type of agent or really strong brand marketing, your book will probably stop selling after the first year. So Amazon and many other print-on-demand companies really push a book out in its first 60 to 90 days of being put on the platform, which is why when my book first came out, I was on the Amazon new sellers list. And the new sellers list is kind of like the regular Amazon bestsellers list, but it's for new books only. And so once you fall outside of that 60 to 90 day period, your book officially becomes kind of old and it starts sinking into the Amazon rankings. And this is where it's really important to ramp up your marketing efforts, whether that is going and getting speaking engagements or whether that is getting booked on podcasts and websites. You really want to take advantage of this, because once Amazon doesn't see you and starts pushing out more new books, your book kind of gets lost in the tangle. Now my book is at a very, very low point in Amazon, and I know that it's going to take me some work and some elbow grease to try to get it back up again. Whereas if I had just kept the momentum going from the beginning, I would have had that inertia to keep moving forward. Agents can also have connections so that you can get onto different places that will market not only your book, but market you. And speaking engagements are one of the best ways to do that. If you have made it to this point, I would love to have you be part of the Gabrielle Denise squad. Over here, we talk about how to live your best life in your 20s by improving your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health. We talk about topics such as ADHD, singleness, Christianity, and we even do some film videos. So if this is your type of content, make sure you subscribe, because there will be new videos every single week. Now, let's get back into it. My next self-publishing tip is probably one of the most important things that you need to know, and that is that once your book is published, the work is only just beginning. So a lot of authors, they make the mistake of publishing their book and then sitting back and waiting to see if people are going to buy it. And the thing is, people don't just buy books. They need a reason to pick it up off the shelves, and your cover story and your title page are only going to do so much in pushing people to read your books. So you need to find some type of marketing tactic that works for you. And I want to tell you guys kind of a funny story. So like I said, when I first published my book, I didn't have any audience. And I knew that in order to have an audience, I needed to go out and find it. And so at the time, I was hosting a free book giveaway on my website for my book, and I wanted to get it out as much as possible. So what I did is I went to Office Max and I made 200 in color flyers. I don't even want to think about how expensive this marketing effort is. The idea was if I had some type of billboard or something that people could see, then maybe they would want to enter the giveaway. And then once they entered the giveaway, I would have their information. So I spent 2 afternoons in the hot summer sun going out and posting these flyers. I posted them all over bus stops and like poles all around my city, and it was kind of cool because I would come back a week later and the flyers would still be there. I wanted to target people who maybe traditionally wouldn't have been able to pay for my book. And I don't really know if the burst in my sales happened because of all of those people who entered the free book giveaway, because to this day, like, I look through all the emails and some of them I don't recognize. So maybe that was a good marketing effort, but it was really boots on the ground, and I want to do a little bit more of like an online effort moving forward. That being said, I think that was a really important lesson for me, which is that like you really have to push yourself and you have to believe in your own works. You have to be the one that's pushing forward and sending people copies of your book and saying, here, read it. And one thing that I learned that was so important is that in the first few days, weeks, months, or years of having your book, you might have to give out a lot of free copies. So I really wish I had done some more of that. So in book number 2, I'm completely changing my marketing tactics. My second to last self-publishing tip is that nobody really prepares you for the emotional toll that takes place after you publish a book. I think I've talked about this before, but imposter syndrome is a huge deal and it's probably going to hit you pretty hard. You see, for a long time, I have loved books and I've loved authors. And so all of my favorite authors are people who I held in such high regard. And publishing my book and joining the ranks of people who have a permanent something out there that people can read for years to come was frankly a little bit frightening to me. I started to feel like, do I deserve to be in this space? Is my book even any good? And even though I had had really positive reviews from all of my beta readers and people who had read them on Amazon, I still felt a little bit like I didn't belong. And it took me about 2.5 years before I finally felt okay with saying that I was an author. And to this day, I still get weirded out about it, because to me, it's not a big deal that I published a book. Like, it's big, but it's kind of one of those things that I don't think about. And so when I tell my friends and family after a while of them knowing me that, like, yeah, I have a book, they're usually like, what? Like, OMG, like, why didn't you tell me? And I wanted to prepare you for that as well, because you might feel this pressure to be super excited and happy and over the moon when your book is published, which I did. But once those feelings fizzled out, I definitely felt like, do I really belong? Should I just take my book off the shelf? Is the story that I told really important? Do people need to hear it? And the answer to all of those questions was yes, but I needed to come to terms with that myself. And I just want to let you know that if you do feel that way, it's totally normal and totally okay. I'm gonna bring out my computer for my last self-publishing tip so that I can share with you guys how much my book has made so far. But I wanted to really explain how the process of royalties work. So when I first was learning about authorship and about how much money they made, I thought that they got paid automatically for every book that sold. That would have been so nice. But instead, what happens is that there's a 3-month delay. And so you might just be chilling one day and you realize, oh, I just got paid $60 from Amazon out of nowhere. And it can kind of catch you by surprise. But this is one of the reasons why I didn't quit my 9-to-5 job, because the money is so unstable. You never know how much you're going to get paid. And after 3 months, you might get a huge amount of money, but you also might just get $0 at all, which has been the reality for me for a little while now. Also, you don't get paid 100% of the money for your book. In fact, you get paid a lot less than that. On Amazon, you get paid approximately 60 to 70% of your book's total value, which means that 30% is going to them. So for a lot of the books that I sold at the beginning of my book's life, I didn't see a lot of that profit because Amazon or like the print on demand company took some of that portion of it. And I actually think the print on demand company took a little bit more than Amazon did. I think I actually ended up making 40% instead of 60%, which is what led me to take my book off of there. Okay, so here's my computer. Here I have the sheet that tells like all the money that I've made so far. So over here we have Amazon. So in April of 2022, book had just came out. I made a total of $26.74 on Amazon. Then in May 2022, this was like right after the book came out and everything, I made 10 cents. Now, I want you to think about that. My first month, I was so excited, so happy to have my book on Amazon. I actually thought I had published it in May, but I guess I published it in April. And so anyway, after having a good month in April, because $26.74 means I sold anywhere between like 10 and 15 copies with royalties and stuff factored into that. Then to come to May and only make 10 cents, now you can see why I didn't quit my day job, because that would have been devastating. Then in June of 2022, I made $12.68. And then July of 22, once again, I made 10 cents. So there was a pattern of medium to high earnings and then 10 cents, and then medium to high earnings and then 10 cents. Then in November of 2022, I made $2.64 on Amazon. And there's this thing on Amazon called KENP Reads, which is where people who have Kindle Unlimited will download your book and they will read like a certain amount of pages. And depending on how many pages that they read, you get extra money from that. So in KENP Reads of 2020, of the KENP Reads in 2022, I made $66, which was great because that was more than most of what I made on Amazon. So all in all, in Amazon in 2022, I made $120.74. Also, you're gonna have to ignore me if I'm like clearing my throat or something. Where I am, the pollen is really, really bad and it's giving me a lot of like chest coldness. So moving on to 2023. 2023 was a rough year for me in life, and as a result, I really didn't advertise my book at all, especially on Amazon. So in 2023, I ended up making $0 on Amazon. Moving on to 2024, once again, I was focused on my career, my life, and really wasn't focused on Amazon sales at all. So in 2024, I made $4.19 on Amazon. Now in 2022, I was also doing Ingram Spark, which is a platform that distributes your book widely to all across the world. I really liked that platform and I wish I had never taken my book off of it. But in 2022 on Ingram Spark, I actually ended up making $63.84, which came from two payments in April of $40.32 and $23.52. Now, these were actually really big orders. I think that at the time there was a popular bookstore that had picked up my book and it was flying off the shelves. Like people were buying many books. So I made quite a bit of money from this Ingram Spark transaction. But the biggest thing that has helped my business is doing offline sales. So I didn't write down them individually, but I did two particular offline sales. And in total, I made $277 from both of those sales. And that was the most money that I've ever made on my book so far. So in the 3 years since my book has been live, the amount of money I've made is $466. So that's it. Because I self-published my book, I ended up spending around $1,000 when all was said and done to get it published. So I'm a little bit less than halfway to my goal of breaking even on my book. I think that with my marketing tactics and everything, I could break even on my book by 2026. That is the reason why I wanted to do this video, to show you guys that just because you have a book out there doesn't mean that everybody's going to read it, and that you are truly the person pushing it forward. Welcome to the moment of inspiration. Today we are in Philippians. So if you have your Bible, take it out. We're going to be in Philippians 4 verse 13. This verse says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." And I wanted to do this verse because maybe God has told you to write a book, but you don't think that you have it in you to do it. Before I wrote a book, there was like many years, probably a period of 11 years where I felt like God was calling me to write this book, but I didn't feel strong enough or qualified enough or good enough to write it. And this verse really inspires me because I really feel like my book wasn't written in my strength. It was written with God's hand, and I couldn't have done it without him. So if God is telling you to do something, maybe he's telling you to write a book, or maybe he's telling you to do something and you're not sure about it, then I would say go ahead and do it, because you will never go wrong with following God. If you need any other help about writing a book or anything, please drop your comments down below. I would love to answer you and help you out. And now let's get on to the prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this person that has came across this video. I pray that they listen to all of these tips, and if you're calling them to write a book, I pray that you would help them to start the first step today. Help them to find the right pencil and paper, or just to open up a Word document and to start writing. And I pray that they would lean on you as they go throughout this process. Bring them the right people who can sit in their corner and mentor them and speak to them and talk to them. And I thank you, Lord, that I get to be a vessel for you and that I get to be an encourager. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you so much for watching this video. If it was helpful, please give it a big fat like, and don't forget to subscribe down below, and make sure you go down to the description box below where you can purchase your own copy of Since When Did Single Mean Sad. I'll see you next week.